Hey everybody. Happy, what is it today? Tuesday. So I'm popping on here as promised. I would love it if we could all share some time together and have a little chat. And I did bring some material just in case. So just as a reminder, I came on live yesterday to say I'd love to have what I'm going to call virtual coffee clutches. Excuse me, and I'll talk about my little cough in a moment, and see if we can't support each other, help each other, just provide a way for us all to have some company during this time. So what I'd love to hear from you, even if you're not watching this live, is if you would like to have some designated times where we go live. And if that's the case, I will be sending out a Zoom link. I'm going to give everybody a free Zoom link where we can just get on together and see each other all at the same time and chat. I think that feels much more immediate and feels much more like we're all here together, because when I do a Facebook Live, it just depends who's around, whether you can chat with me or not. I see a notice when you come on, but we're not actually talking face to face. It's me talking to you and you leaving comments and messages. So it looks like right now there isn't anybody on here live with me. So what I'm going to do, and I'll be doing this on my main page as well. So I'll just be basically repeating this on my main page. And if you catch this video first, you don't need to go and take a look at that one. But I want to talk about what we can do to stay grounded during this time. So even before I get to that, the first thing I want to know is, how are you all doing? How are you feeling during this crazy, crazy time? I really feel like we are in absolutely extraordinary times right now, and that this is a tipping point in human history. I really, really believe that what we become after this is really going to be determined by how we behave during this time. And I do not believe it's all negative. I think I've said this before, that I think for many of us in North America, we are not taking this pandemic seriously enough. But at the same time, I believe this is going to highlight some of the best parts of humanity as well. Okay, having said that, I'll just give you a little update on me. I have had a cough for a few days, a dry cough, which is one of the symptoms of COVID, and I've also had a low fever. So I promptly called my doctor yesterday. Hey, I don't know who it is, but let me know in the comments, because this doesn't tell me who's on. So I promptly called my doctor. Hey, Georgina. And they said, call Telehealth Ontario, which is like the province-wide number for people to just get basic health information and tell them what's been going on. The secretary said, I think you should get tested. Call telehealth and they will let you know for sure if you should get tested and tell you where to go. Well, I spent probably about 5 hours on the phone waiting for telehealth yesterday at different times, and I could not get through because everybody's wondering if they should get tested. So my husband and I have been in self-imposed isolation since the weekend, so like since Friday. So I'm not really concerned that I'm passing this on to anyone at this point, but even if it does turn out, or if it doesn't turn out, whatever it is I've got. And then I did send an email to the public health line here in town, and still waiting to hear a response. So until I hear back from them, I'm going to stay home unless, things get a lot worse. But I apologize if I sort of have a little coughing fit here and there in between talking to you, because I do have, it just seems to erupt, and it's a dry cough. It's not, otherwise I just feel like I have a cold. And I kind of hesitated to say that because I don't want people to not take this seriously. I don't know what this is. It might just be a cold. The reason I felt I should call my doctor is because I tend to get a lot of flu-like, cold-like things in the winter because of candida, that my immunity is already, I don't know if it's lowered, but my immune system is kind of tired all the time because of candida. And I almost never, ever, ever get a cough. So for me, this is very unusual, and that is why I felt I should call my doctor. And I would say the same to any of you. If you're feeling under the weather and anything's unusual, or you have any of the symptoms, we have a self-assessment tool online here that I looked at, and I had 4 out of the 6 things that you're supposed to look for. Thanks, Georgina. So that's why. But I feel okay. Like if I really felt sick, really, believe me, I wouldn't be on here. Let me just grab my tea. I was going to say my coffee because it's a coffee clutch, but it's actually green tea with a little bit of chocolate almond milk in it. So what I did want to talk about is, like I said, if any of you have anything at all you want to discuss around this, please let me know. Georgina, if there's anything you'd like me to talk about. But I did prepare kind of just some notes that came out of my head that I wanted to share with you as a way to deal with what might be going on for people. So the other thing that people that you know about me, certainly you guys in here know about me, is that I have a history of anxiety and panic attacks. Luckily, that has been relatively under control. I mean, I'm very anxious about what's going to happen to the world. And, I really don't want my husband or myself or anybody we love to get sick like all of you. But at the same time, my general demeanor has been pretty much normal. That might partly be because I work at home and that hasn't changed. So like day-to-day life here hasn't changed a lot. I don't go out a lot anyway. So like, oh, the bars are closed. Who cares, right? It doesn't affect me personally. And so I'm not feeling it. But I certainly am feeling having my husband home 24/7. And, our schedules are different. So I was thinking about how do people cope in these times and what can I offer that might be of use. And I've been doing a lot of reading around what other people are suggesting to stay grounded and stay calm. And so I have sort of 3 levels of things that we can do. And okay, thanks, Georgina. She says, share away. And if I have any questions, I will ask them. 3 levels of how we can approach this. And I'm actually going to start with the most urgent one, which is if you are feeling totally anxious and scared and freaked out, which so many of us are, then there's a middle level of what we can do to just maintain normalcy. And then I have an upper level of ideas for if you really want to like really attack this head on and feel more empowered than usual. And people online are offering all kinds of advice like that. So I picked really what I like and what fits what's happening with me and what I think will be most useful for you guys who are also dealing, many of you, with chronic conditions. Some of you also have anxiety and so on. So if you're feeling scared and if you are feeling anxious and fearful, what I have found, and I know this is something that people always poo-poo, but what I have found the most helpful, I'm going to say 2 things that were the most helpful, is meditation. And I'm excited that next month we're going to go through various kinds of meditations. So for those of you who may have tried it, if you're in the Sweet Life, we're going to be talking about different types of meditations. And I'm going to share with you the ones that have worked for me that are, I don't want to say easiest, but that are the easiest to get into and that can still sort of have that effect without you having to be a Buddhist monk or whatever. So meditation, just deep breathing, just stop yourself wherever you're feeling that tension. I can't do a lot through my slightly clogged nose, but take a deep breath in through your nose and out through your mouth. Do that 3 times, and what that does is it flicks the switch from the autonomic nervous system. I can't even speak today. Sorry. So that you are calming your body. Just 3 deep breaths, even if you don't meditate. And anytime you catch yourself, just take a deep breath, close your eyes, and try to get grounded in the present. That has worked a lot for me. I have been meditating for 10 minutes a day in the morning, which isn't huge. And particularly if we now are all at home and have some time to do that, that might be something that you could try. And again, if that's of interest in this group, I am happy to share a meditation, maybe come on in the morning and just do a meditation together and I can talk you through it. The second thing that is similar, but it affects the same part of the body, which is the amygdala at the back of the brain, which is the fear center, is EFT or emotional freedom technique. So using EFT actually calms the amygdala, which is what puts you into crisis mode in your brain. And so I could just really run through the EFT points with you. For most of us, there's the karate chop is the first one. Then we go to the top of the head, and you're just tapping lightly, like you're pressing hard enough to feel it, but lightly enough that it doesn't hurt. And then I generally, when I do it by myself, I take off my glasses, because you also want to do right between the eyebrows, right at the sides of the eyes where the bone just meets the eye socket, on the bottom of the eye, also right about the center where the bone meets the eye socket, just below the nose, just below the mouth. And then the next one is just around the shoulder blades. And people call this the bra strap, but I would say it's like the top of the side of the bra, really, under the arm. And then the last one that my practitioner introduced to me that I hadn't heard before, and you can just see, like, my hands are the skinniest part of my body, so you can actually see this spot between the two bones is where you're going to tap. And that's the last one. And then you can go back to the karate chop and start all over. The other thing I do, which I think I mentioned online in the stress workshop, is that I do the karate chop at stoplights, or, now, not doing much driving. So even when I'm like walking the dogs and they're off leash or whatever, anytime I think of it. So for EFT to have a positive impact, you really need to do at least 3 cycles of all those points. And what you're doing while you're practicing EFT is stating out loud the thing that is negative and that you wish would change. So for now, it might be, I'm feeling so anxious about this epidemic. I'm worried about my father who's in a nursing home. I'm worried about my sister who I don't think is as careful as she should be. And it's really making me stress. And then you work your way through. And then after the first or second cycle, you may find that just the physical tension has resolved a little bit, just because, like I said, tapping these points calms the amygdala. So you want to wait until you actually feel a little bit different before you move to the positive thing, which is most often, I deeply and completely love and accept myself. You could also transition between the really stressful idea and just saying things like, it's possible that I could be more calm about this. So you're like sort of stepping towards the result you want, and maybe one step at a time each session. You don't want to say something that you don't believe, but if you say, it's possible I could like dial down the fear and anxiety at least one level, right? Something that you believe. And then that also ingrains that in your brain and helps the amygdala to calm down that way too. So, excuse me. So that's something that you can do. And that's those are my 2 top suggestions for people who are anxious that aren't using medication to deal with anxiety. I don't take medication for anxiety, and I never have. So for me, I don't know what kind of impact that would have on people, if it is useful. And if it's something that you're working with your doctor, obviously you want to continue that. I talked about deep breathing. Then we have the whole collection of things that are really easy to find online, so I'm not going to go through all of these, but just basically activities that you like and that calm you down. So for some people, it's yoga. For some people, it's painting. For some people, it's singing and dancing. It might be walking in nature. And right now, I mean, unless we're living in lockdown, and so far we are not, here where I live, they are suggesting that people only go out for essentials, and only send one person at a time. Most of I would say all of the grocery stores and pharmacies are still open. A lot of other places are closing down. But I know if you're in total lockdown, you can't even leave your residence except for those reasons. Right now, we are totally open here to still go for a walk in nature. And like, for those of you who are at home off work, this is a perfect opportunity to get out into the world. Obviously, you're not going to stop and greet your neighbor by shaking hands. But, my husband had to go out this morning and get dog food. And he said the streets are empty. The store was empty. So we're not worried about really meeting crowds when we go for a walk. We take our dogs for a walk because they've got to go out every day. And there's a big empty field near where we live where we let them run around. So it's nice to be outside and breathing fresh air and like look up at the sky and notice how blue and beautiful it is. Nature is still thriving. There are some things to be grateful for in our world. And if the more you can get into that mindset, the better you're going to feel if you're feeling anxious. So that's another thing. And then the other thing that I found extremely useful, and I'm actually going to start posting these, is making a list of all the times in your life where you got through something incredibly scary or challenging, or where you were fearful or anxious or even horrible, right? So everybody has challenges in their lives, and everybody has traumatic events that happen to them at some point or another. And I think creating a list for yourself to remind yourself of your own resilience and how strong you are and how capable you are of weathering this kind of situation, although this is unprecedented. We've never had to live through something like this before. But at the same time, there have been other really horrible things that we've lived through and come out the other side. And so for many of us, when we're feeling scared that, like, oh my God, I don't know what I'm going to do, how am I going to survive this? Reminding yourself that you have managed to survive really difficult situations before is a great way to bolster up your positive feelings in yourself, your confidence that you will get through, and so on. So that's really, for me, been very useful. It's, journaling does a similar kind of function. And so that's something you can do. So I think for those who are feeling really scared and anxious, that's really important. And when I talk about the next category, which is just sort of normalizing, trying to remain feeling like things are normal in your life, there's sort of an overlap between the first step there too. But if you guys have things that you've been doing for any of these categories that I'm talking about, I really would love you to share in the comments below, what have you been doing to get through this in a way that helps you feel okay, good, and what have your coping mechanisms been? Okay, 1 second, one more sip. All right, the second category, I think it's really important when we're not feeling anxious and fearful, if we can get beyond that, and even if we're still in that to some extent, I think it's really, really important to try to continue to feel like this is normal life as much as possible, because our routines and our day-to-day life have been interrupted, they've been changed, and for so many people, I work at home all the time. I work online all the time. This doesn't feel weird to me, but I know, like, for my husband, or for so many people who go into an office like you, Georgina, who don't work from the home or who don't work from the home all the time, this feels bizarre to be at home all the time. And a lot of people sort of don't know what to do with themselves. So a few things, and I would suggest following Ariana Huffington from the Huffington Post on Instagram. She posts a lot of really great tips on how to be dealing with working at home. And she started doing that from the day she sent all her staff home. So one of the things that she suggests, which I just love, and you will see I've done, is get dressed every day the same way you would as if you were going to work. It will trick your brain into feeling a little less stressed because this is just a normal day. So that's one thing to do. And Georgina says, I set up a walking challenge I saw that, Georgina. I set up a walking challenge on my personal Facebook page for friends and family to get outside for a few minutes every day. I'm going to see if this will let me see the rest. No, it won't let me see the rest of your comment. Unfortunately, I tapped see more and it doesn't tell me more. And I have been walking for about 45 minutes every day, which is something that I normally do. So that's, for you, a great way to feel like you're doing the normal thing. I don't know where you're going to find tires and weights and things. I don't know if you can still go to the gym, but that's a perfect example of doing something that just keep up with your normal routines as much as you possibly can. I got up at the normal time today. I did my usual meditation and my EFT and my journaling and all the things I always do before I start my business day, or at least I try to always do before I start my business day. And it just makes you feel like it's a normal day. And that also keeps the body calm, keeps the nervous system calm, and helps you to think clearly. Because the one thing I did mention is when your amygdala is going crazy, and when we are in a high stress state and anxious, our brain doesn't think clearly or logically. Logic tends to be thrown to the winds. It's just a fact of having all of those stress hormones in our body and how they affect our thinking. So we are not able to be as clearly analytical, logical, or creative as we could be when the brain is calm and relaxed. And so you want to be thinking as clearly as possible, because that's obviously going to help you to determine how to behave in every instance as you're working your way through this whole pandemic lockdown and so on. Georgina says, and our office sent us home Friday night, and we are all working from home for the next 3 weeks, so we're all self-isolated. And it says ... see more. I'm tapping. Oh, here we are. But I am still going out for necessities. So that sounds. I mean, good on your business. I remember you mentioned that earlier, and I thought, wow, that was an early move and a very laudable move, because I think most businesses are just getting there yesterday or today. But it's great, and of course, necessities are still available. So we are trying to really determine what is a necessity and what isn't. I am used to having so much food in our house because as a recipe developer, I have so many extra ingredients all the time, and we've really cut back because I know that people are getting really nervous, and people are afraid that the shops are going to run out of food. We've been reassured by our supermarket presidents and government that the food supply is the same as always, so there's no need to go crazy that way, right? So that's something you can do. Stick to your normal routine, stick to your normal hours, wear your normal clothes, and also have your normal contacts as much as possible. So for me, I've been meeting with, my sister who lives in Montreal, sadly is a tech dinosaur, like a dinosaur. She's like a Luddite. So this is someone who, you guys will laugh when I tell you this, she does not own a smartphone or any cell phone. She does not use Zoom or anything like that. She does not have a touch tone phone in her house. She has a rotary, a dial, a phone. Remember, like from the 1950s? And she's always saying, your phone number is so much fun because it takes so long for the numbers to go around. And I think, so she has no voicemail. So how am I going to keep in touch with her? We talk on the phone. That's really the best we can do. We can't see each other. But with my friends, we use Zoom, we use FaceTime, whatever, where we can actually see each other. And for me personally, seeing the faces is very important. I love hearing the voice, but you're used to talking to people one-on-one. You want to see their face. You want to see their expressions. It actually enhances the conversation. So I would say use those methods as much as you can and feel comfortable with, because that's going to help you feel connected to people, or at least it does for me. So that's something else. I think, we've been hearing about people checking in on their elderly neighbors and so on. And of course, now you don't want to go in the house and in any way have physical contact with them. But something that a friend of mine talked about, which I thought was a fabulous idea. I know Georgina goes, wow, it's hard to imagine in 2020, isn't it? I know, she's crazy. I think she's crazy. And this is a former nurse, so maybe she just doesn't want to have those kind of connections anymore. Georgina says, can you manage to do a FaceTime with your father in the home? Have you asked if they could make it possible for you? So I have. I asked before this happened, and they said no, because they would have to use their own iPhone and give it to him, which they either aren't able or don't want to do. So the sad part about my dad is when my sister had hired these helpers to sit with him for several hours a day, because in the home he's in, unless you are an employee, you're not even allowed to help them get out of bed. You're not allowed to touch the people, basically. So they would sit with them and keep him company while he was fed his dinner. And if I called, they would answer the phone. It's on a table beside his bed. Sadly, my dad can no longer see properly, and he can hardly hear, and he can't get to the phone himself. So there's no way to reach him. And I'm going to cry. Like the other people in the home, there's a lot of old people who are isolated in this nursing home who have no idea why suddenly no one's visiting them. And to me, that's the hardest part. Sorry, guys. Because you can't reach him. And we just have to hope and rely on the staff to be kind enough and tell them and try to explain to them why no one is there suddenly. Because my dad is also at a point where he's becoming demented and doesn't really understand. So I can't even imagine what's going on in that home. My sister, the former nurse, seems to believe that, thank you. My sister seems to believe that because they're in Quebec and the system is already so overloaded, she seems to believe that they are going to be forced to allow somebody to come in because the regular staff simply cannot keep up with even the basic care of these people. And if that's true, then that's actually a good thing, right? Because it means somebody will be able to go and be with him. So we're kind of hoping. So that's, yeah. But if you are able to do something like FaceTime with people you care about, it's so important, especially for the elderly. So I was going to just tell you about what my friend is doing. I'm just going to take a quick sip because my throat's getting sore. What my friend is doing in her neighborhood on her block, and I thought this was brilliant. She printed out little flyers and she just introduced herself and put her actual address on there because it's only the people on her block. She wanted the neighbors to know who it was. And she said, during this time, if you're shut in or for whatever reason you need help, here's the number you can text me at, and we can all exchange texts if you like, or we can communicate by text. But she basically offered hers first and said, anybody who needs anything, I'm still okay. I'm happy to go buy you groceries, whatever. It may come to a point where we're not even allowed to do that, but I think just knowing that somebody's there and you can text if there's an emergency and they can call 911 or whatever, I think that would be so reassuring for people who are shut-ins, who are older, who know how to text, just to have that information. And so I thought about doing that on my street as well. I just think it's a lovely, lovely idea. So that's something you can do also to stay in contact and be helpful to your neighbors, because I really think it's so important that we think about others at this time. Okay, so so that's just like, those are things just to make you feel like it's normal, keeping up with your routines, wearing the normal clothes, keeping your normal hours, and so on. What can you do even beyond that to try to feel like you have this under control? Because I know if you're like me, I like to feel that I have control over the situation. And in a situation like this, we really don't. I can tell my husband, wash your hands. Don't touch anybody when you go out. I mean, he's been going to the office up until last Friday. I don't have control over that. And it's kind of making me crazy, right? Because I'm a type A control freak. So what can you do to still feel like you do have some control? Again, the whole purpose is to try to calm the anxiety, right? So the first thing is, and this applies maybe more to people with kids, but make a plan. Make a plan for your week. Make a schedule. What are you going to do when? And, especially if you're dealing with kids or family members that you're caring for, once creating a plan around what you can do, that can really make you feel better. So Georgina, that's great. Take care of yourself too, Georgina, and thanks so much. Virtual hug back to you. So whatever kind of plan you can make can be very, very helpful. And also, what can you do to take full advantage of the positive things that are inherent in this situation? Because for most of us, we don't really consider that this is something positive. However, if you follow Instagram, there's this meme going around that I think is great. And I'm going to see if I can find it and post it in here, and it's saying things like, well, you always said you wanted to slow down. Now you have a chance to slow down. You always said you wished you could work from home. Now you can work from home. You always said you wish you had more time with your family. Now you have more time with your family. You always wanted to learn a new language. Now you can learn a new language, right? So these are all things we can do, all the things that we've been saying we want to do and we didn't have time for many of us, we now have a lot more time on our hands, right? So maybe take on something new, learn a new language, or do some artwork or crafts or sewing or knitting, stuff that you have been either putting off or has fallen out of your life because you didn't have time. You may have the time to do that now, and it would be a great time to start working on those kinds of activities again. Also, think of something that that you want to try that you have never tried. Sorry, I think I just said that one. But embracing new activities is a great way to use this time. And it can be so useful in terms of your emotional state and also expanding your thinking and creativity and so on. The other thing that a lot of people say they want to do but haven't had time to do is declutter, clean up, right? My office, you see the back here where, I have decluttered my shelves. My business coach wants me to throw away like 90% of those books. But hey, Deb, to throw away like 90% of those books, but I just couldn't make myself do it. So I've thrown away like 50% of my books. I'm going to go through that shelf again though and see how much more I can declutter, because I really like the fact that now my little glass collection is showing, and that I have some things that look pretty on there. So decluttering, it can make a huge difference, not only to, things you've been putting off and want to get rid of, but also, hey Deb, but also just your emotional state. It is amazing how much clearer your thoughts, and how much, I don't even know how to describe it. I just feel like my mind opens more. I'm open to more things the more I get rid of, honestly. So this is this whole minimalism thing. But if you've been thinking about doing that and you haven't, now's a good time to do it, right? And then the last thing I want to say before I finish this sort of category about what can we do to feel empowered or to feel like we are taking control of the situation, and I'll probably talk more about this on Saturday. I'm doing an Instagram live with a colleague of mine, is immune boosting. So, you should always be eating healthy. Of course, that goes without saying. And I suspect that most of you in here are, because that's what this whole group's about, or not entirely, but it's one of the main pillars of this group. At the same time, there are things that we can do now to boost our immunity even more. And of course, one is not getting stressed out, because stress totally depletes the immune system. If you haven't watched it yet, go look at the stress coaching call from the Sweet Life earlier this month, because I talk about all of the ways that stress affects you physically. But you want to increase your vitamin C. So for immunity in general, when I was in nutrition school, we learned the acronym ACEs, ACES. And what that stands for is vitamin A, vitamin C, vitamin E, and selenium, the mineral. So you want to increase all of those. And those are they're going to build the immune system, boost the immune system. For particularly for respiratory in the holistic world, because this is a respiratory infection, if you're dealing with anything respiratory, you want to increase your probiotics and increase your vitamin C. Those are both, vitamin C is antiviral, and probiotics can help decrease the length of respiratory infections, apparently. Excuse me, speaking of respiratory infection. So those are good. And then there are things like garlic, which is an all-purpose sort of broad spectrum antimicrobial, which attacks viruses. It also attacks germs. It also attacks bacteria, all kinds of things. So garlic is a wonder food, and I've been trying to eat garlic in pretty much anything I eat these days. And then you can go for things like the herbals, like oil of oregano or echinacea or golden seal and so on, which will help to diminish the number of bacteria and germs and microbes in the body. So those are all useful too. And I'm going to do, like I said, a little bit of a more expanded list of those on Saturday. Right now, my colleague and I are talking about Saturday morning at 10 a.m. Eastern, which she's going to do. And this is Christine Lee. And I'll put her name in the comments. It's spelled like the typical way of spelling Christine, Christine. Lee is Li, and she's a procrastination coach, but she's also a psychotherapist. So she and I will be sort of teaming up to talk about what people can do during this time. So Deborah says, do I mean ingest oil of oregano? Do I mean ingest oil of oregano? So oil of oregano has been around for a long time, and it's often used for things like infections and colds and flu. It's an antifungal as well. And people will put just a few drops in some water and drink it a couple times a day, sometimes 3 times a day. I would follow what's on the bottle. So if you buy oil of oregano from the health food store, there will be instructions on the bottle as to how you can use it, the best way to use it. So I hope that answers your question. If not, let me know and write again if that doesn't answer your question. So yeah, I think, under feet or take orally. It's up to you. I mean, if you can take it orally, if you can stand it, it's going to be better for you taken orally, but it works under the feet as well. From what I understand, it's absorbed through the soles of the feet. So you can take it either way. So I'm just going to quickly recap what I talked about. At the beginning of the live, I talked about if you're currently sort of in the throes of anxiety and fear and feeling very scared about this, like so many people are, there are some things you can do to just calm down the system. So you try to get back to an equilibrium. Then I also talked about what we can do to just feel normal and have things feel like we're in our regular lives, because everything, so much is not normal right now. And then in the third category, I talked about sort of extra measures if you want to really go out and feel like you're a superhero attacking this and feeling powerful around what's happening with COVID-19. Some of the steps you can take beyond that will give you a sense of control and in this situation, because really what I think I'm going to close with, and I'm just quickly going to look at the clock, is the real control for everybody in this situation. It has to come from inside here. That what we think around this virus, and I don't mean when we are physically around this virus, but like our thoughts around the idea of the virus and what's happening, that is what is going to determine how we feel about things. And so the more you think about how awful this is and how scary this is, the more scared you're going to feel. And that's not to say that I want to downplay the seriousness of it. I definitely don't. I take this extremely seriously. And as I've said before, I think most people in Canada and the US are not taking this seriously enough. At the same time, we don't want to be paralyzed by fear, because that doesn't help us and that doesn't help anybody else we care about, or even people we don't know that we have an impact on. So we need to be clear-headed and we need to be calm if we want to weather this effectively and come out the other side. And I'm hoping and I'm hopeful that what is going to come out on the other side is going to be a different outlook on how we've been conducting our lives, and maybe how we interact with other people, and maybe how the world works literally, and that we may have a new paradigm, or at least the beginning of a new paradigm once we're done. So, okay. Any questions from anybody who's here before we wrap up for today? I'll wait a few seconds because I know there's a bit of a delay. So what I'd love to hear from you are two things. If you have anything else you want me to discuss, please put it in the comments. More importantly, is this something that would be useful for you as an ongoing meeting where we don't do it this way, where we do it as a Zoom call and we can actually chat with each other one-on-one? And I would be perfectly happy to have a Zoom call so that you guys can chat with each other. You know, if you would like to just meet with others in the group and talk or share experiences, ideas, comments, questions, whatever. So please let me know those two things. Any new questions, and should I convert this to a Zoom call? If it's useful for you, I'd love to do that, and can come on here once a week, every day, whatever people want in the during this time that I think so many of us can use some extra support. All right. So thank you for tuning in, sending you all virtual hugs and much love. Stay safe, stay healthy, and I will see you next time, everybody. Okay, bye-bye.